into it. The first thing, we want to set the groundwork with is, from a theological perspective, what is the problem you see, particularly with incarceration, with the incarceration system in the United States?
Yeah, so, before I jump right into theological, I just want to set some baseline features of our system that makes this a problem for those who are not particularly acclimated to this subject. So first and foremost, we talk about the known issues, the issues that a lot of people know already, and that's the fact that we have a very large prison population in this country. And that stayed steady at just under 200,000 people until the 1970s. And then we saw a sharp rise, which we'll talk about, of course. And by 2016, we had 2.3 million Americans in prison. And that is a lot of people on its own. But when you put it in the general context of the world, you should know that us as Americans, even though we think that we're the center of the universe, we are actually only 5% of the population of the world, but we have just under 25% of the world's prisoners. And that is the highest rate in the world. And so what goes along with that, to our shame, is that we also have the highest rate of women in the global prison population. So we have the highest percentage in that area too. And then sadly, we put in detention centers, juvenile detention centers in any given year, upwards of 500,000 youth. And then with that increase that I just mentioned from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, we have people that went into prison in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Well, guess what? They get older. And so now we have an increasing elderly population in our prisons. So we have old people in our prisons, we have young people, we have women, which is crazy. And then, as everyone knows, we have a horrible racial disparity with, I think, just over a half of prisoners are Black and Latino, even though just about 77% of the population is white. So we have a real problem. But then we have lesser known issues, because a lot of people know a lot of that stuff. Yeah. But the lesser known issues is the fact that we just have too many laws. It is far too easy to be arrested in America. And then also, it's easy to serve time if you're innocent. And we're going to get into that. And it's easy to spend a lot of time in prison. So it's not just that a lot of people are going to prison, and it's not just that people are innocent, but we have these incredibly long sentences because of mandatory minimums, which we'll get into in a bit. And so, we also have a police force that has generally no accountability, because we have something called qualified immunity, which means that you can't, it's very hard for you to bring a case against a police department all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will not look at it. Mm-hmm. And then we have a system that empowers aggressive prosecutors, and they have virtually no accountability, and they have a lot of discretion. So they can have grace with certain people, and then they can also be harsh with other people. Mm-hmm. And that leads to a whole lot of inequitable treatment. And that's often along the lines of race and class. And so one of their tools is a plea bargain. And a plea bargain means that they can threaten you to say, if you go to trial, we'll give you this really serious charge, and you'll have a much longer sentence. You have a chance at being found guilty of a much larger sentence. Or you can just take this smaller sentence, maybe just parole or a year or two in prison, if you just say you're guilty, and we don't even have to go to trial. So we have a lot of people that are in there based just on plea bargains. And then the people that actually go to prison because they did serious crimes, they're guilty of it, they go to prison, and then people don't know that these conditions are even more deplorable than you think. And so things like rotten food, people don't know that they get terrible food. And a lot of the times this food is actually expired and not edible at all for any human being. And mentally ill people are locked up with people who are not mentally ill. The youth are locked up with adults and are sexually abused many times. And then when you get out of prison, they have something called a technical violation, which is a small law It's a small violation that doesn't apply to people who haven't been in prison, but that will land you back in prison. And this could be something small, like you went onto the internet, you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you weren't supposed to, or you were late for your probation to your probation officer.
Mhm.
And so after all of those things, once you finish doing your time, you are still doing time because you are stripped of all of your rights as a citizen. So it's hard for you to get a job because you have to say you're a convicted felon, and most people won't hire you. You can't get a loan, a school loan. You can't get in housing. Landlords legally can discriminate against you for being a felon, and then you don't have the right to vote. And of course, there's the social stigma. So all of this is a social and humanitarian level outrage.
Yeah.
And me, as an apologist and a Christian, I look at the system and I see dehumanization, racism, greed, people stripped of hope, injustice. And I think to myself, why would a Christian nation be marked by an institution that's so antithetical to the gospel that we claim to preach? And so that's the problem in a nutshell that I am pondering and here to talk about.
Man, hope y'all took some notes. I won't even touch on the Christian Nation comment, but anyway,